The end of everything. Rebecca Torres stood in the marble-floored living room of the penthouse. She had called home for 5 years. The Manhattan skyline stretched before her through floor-tizzling windows, but she barely noticed the view anymore. In her hands, she held divorce papers that felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. "Just sign them, Rebecca," Jonathan Pierce said from across the room. His voice carried that familiar tone of impatience, the one he used when dealing with inconvenient matters. "We both know this marriage was a mistake." Rebecca looked up at the man she had married when she was just 27. Jonathan Pierce, at 45, was everything society told her she should want. Handsome, successful, powerful. His real estate empire stretched across 3 continents. His name opened doors that most people didn't even know existed. A mistake? Rebecca's voice cracked slightly. "Is that what you call 5 years of marriage?" Jonathan adjusted his designer suit jacket and checked his expensive watch. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. You knew what this was. A girl from a small architecture firm in Brooklyn was never going to fit into my world permanently. It was fun while it lasted." The casual cruelty of his words cut deep. Rebecca had given up her promising career as an architect to become his wife. She had left her tiny but beloved apartment, distanced herself from friends he considered beneath them, and spent 5 years trying to transform herself into the perfect society wife. She remembered the countless dinner parties where his business partners would discuss deals in rapid Spanish. Thinking she couldn't understand, she remembered Jonathan leaning over to his friend Richard during one particularly important dinner and saying in Spanish, "She tries so hard to fit in, but you can see the Brooklyn in her. It's like putting a street cat in a palace." The table had erupted in polite laughter while Rebecca sat frozen, understanding just enough Spanish to feel the sting of his words. That night, lying awake beside him, she realized that no matter what she did, Jonathan would always see her as someone who didn't belong. The financial settlement, is more than fair." Jonathan continued, sliding a document across the glass coffee table. $5 million. That's generous considering you came into this marriage with almost nothing. Rebecca looked at the number. $5 million. It was more money than her parents had made in their entire lives. Her father had been a construction worker. Her mother had cleaned houses to help pay for Rebecca's architecture degree. They had been so proud when she graduated. When she got her job at the small but respected firm in Brooklyn, then she met Jonathan Pierce at a charity gala where her firm was presenting a proposal for affordable housing. He had been charming, attentive, interested in her ideas, or so she thought. Looking back now, she realized he had been interested in her youth, her freshness, her difference from the polished women in his usual social circle. "I don't want your money." "Jonathan," Rebecca said quietly. Jonathan laughed, a sound that held no warmth. "Don't be ridiculous." "What are you going to do? Go back to that little architecture firm? They probably don't even remember you after 5 years." Rebecca felt anger rising in her chest, hot and fierce. "I'll figure it out." "Rebecca, be realistic," Jonathan said, switching to Spanish without thinking. "You have no career, no connections of your own, no real skills for the world you've been living in. Take the money. Buy yourself a nice apartment somewhere affordable. Maybe find a teacher or a social worker to marry. Someone more your speed." Rebecca stood up, her hands trembling slightly. She had understood every word he said in Spanish. Over the past 5 years, while he thought she was simply shopping and attending charity luncheons, she had been taking private Spanish lessons. She had wanted to surprise him, to show him she could master his language, understand his business discussions, truly be his partner instead. She had gained the ability to understand exactly what he thought of her, walking away goodbye. "Jonathan," she said in English, refusing to reveal her understanding of Spanish. Not yet. That knowledge would be her secret weapon. "Rebecca, be sensible," he called after her. "Take the settlement. You'll need it." She paused at the door, her hand on the cold metal handle. "The only thing I need is to never see you again." As she walked out of the penthouse, Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face. She had given Jonathan Pierce 5 years of her life. 5 years of trying to be someone she wasn't. 5 years of feeling small, inadequate, and unworthy. But as the elevator descended from the 45th floor, something shifted inside her. Alongside the pain and humiliation, she felt something else. A spark of determination. A flicker of rage that could fuel her forward. The friend who stabbed Rebecca's phone rang as she stood on the sidewalk, her single suitcase beside her. She had taken nothing from the penthouse except the clothes she had brought into the marriage and a few personal items. "Rebecca? It's Diana. Are you okay?" Diana Wu had been Rebecca's closest friend before the marriage. Jonathan had never approved of Diana, saying she was too ambitious, too focused on her career as a business consultant, which meant, of course, that Diana was exactly the kind of person Rebecca needed right now. "I did it, Diana. The divorce is final." "Thank God," Diana said without hesitation. "I never liked that arrogant man. Come to my place. I have the guest room ready." "Diana, I don't want to be a burden." "Stop. You're coming over. We're ordering Thai food and making a plan." "You're only 32, Rebecca. Your life is just beginning." As Rebecca climbed into a taxi, she looked back at the gleaming tower where Jonathan lived in his perfect penthouse with his perfect life. He thought he had one. He thought he had put her back in her place. But Jonathan Pierce had made a critical error. He had underestimated her. He assumed that because she came from a humble background, she would always be humble. He assumed that because she had been quiet, she was weak. He had no idea that Rebecca Torres had spent 5 years not just being his wife, but watching, learning, and planning. She had observed how his business worked. She had quietly taken online courses in real estate law and finance. She had saved every penny of the allowance he gave her. The money he assumed she spent on shoes and handbags. New beginning Diana's apartment in Queens was small compared to the penthouse, but it felt like home. Warm, welcoming, filled with books and art and life. "Tell me everything," Diana said. Handing Rebecca a glass of wine, Rebecca took a sip and then told her friend about the divorce. About Jonathan's cruel words, about walking away with nothing. Nothing? Diana raised an eyebrow. "He offered you nothing?" $5 million. "And you turned it down?" "Rebecca, I know you're proud, but that's a lot of money." "I don't want money I didn't earn," Rebecca said firmly. "I want to build something myself. Something that's mine. Something he can never take credit for or diminish." Diana studied her friend's face. "You have a plan, don't you?" Rebecca smiled, a small, determined smile. "I've been taking online courses for 3 years. Real estate development, property law, investment strategies. I have $75,000 saved from the allowance he gave me. And I have something else." "What?" "I have 5 years of watching Jonathan Pierce make deals. I know his methods, his strategies, his weaknesses. I know which properties he wants, which deals he's planning, which investors he's courting. And he has no idea that I understand Spanish, which means he has no idea how much I actually heard and understood." Diana's eyes widened. "Rebecca Torres, are you planning what I think you're planning?" "I'm going back to Brooklyn," Rebecca said. "I'm going to start small. Buy distressed properties, renovate them, create affordable housing. The kind of architecture I always wanted to do. And I'm going to build an empire that makes Jonathan Pierce's real estate holdings look like a child's toy collection." "That's ambitious." "He told me I was nothing. That I would always be nothing. That my background made me less than him." Rebecca's voice grew stronger. "I'm going to prove him wrong. Not for him. For me. For every person he's ever looked down on. For every woman he's made feel small." Diana raised her glass. "Then let's get to work." "But Rebecca, this won't be easy. Real estate development is brutal. You'll be going up against people with more money, more connections, more experience." "I know," Rebecca said. "But I have something they don't have." "What's that?" "I have nothing to lose and everything to prove." As the two friends talked late into the night, planning and dreaming and strategizing, Rebecca felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. Not the fragile hope of a woman trying to please an impossible husband, but the fierce hope of a woman who had decided to save herself. Jonathan Pierce thought the story ended with their divorce. He thought he had closed the chapter on Rebecca Torres. He had no idea that the real story was just beginning. The first step 6 months after the divorce, Rebecca sat in a cramped office above a laundromat in Brooklyn. The space was tiny, barely bigger than a closet, but the rent was cheap and the location was perfect. From her window, she could see the neighborhood where she had grown up. The streets she knew like the back of her hand. "This is the property I'm talking about," Rebecca said, spreading blueprints across her makeshift desk. Diana leaned over to examine them, along with Robert Chen, a small-time property developer Rebecca had met at a real estate seminar. Robert was 55. A first-generation immigrant who had built a modest portfolio of rental properties through decades of hard work. He had kind eyes and rough hands, and he reminded Rebecca of her father. "It's a mess," Robert said bluntly, looking at the photos of the abandoned building. 3 stories, water damage, structural issues. Most developers wouldn't touch it. "Exactly," Rebecca said, her eyes bright with determination, "which is why we can get it for almost nothing. The owner is desperate to sell. It's been sitting empty for 4 years, costing him money in taxes and fines." Diana pulled up financial projections on her laptop. "If Rebecca's numbers are right, we could renovate it for about $300,000, including the purchase price. Then rent out the ground floor as commercial space and convert the upper floors into 6 apartments. Affordable apartments," Rebecca added firmly. "This neighborhood needs housing that working families can actually afford, not luxury condos that push people out." Robert studied the blueprints more carefully. "You designed this renovation yourself?" Rebecca nodded. "It's what I trained for. Before I became Mrs. Jonathan Pierce, I was an architect. A good one." "I can see that," Robert said, pointing to her clever use of space and light. "This is smart design. Practical, but beautiful. You've thought about how people actually live." "So you'll partner with me?" Rebecca asked, trying to keep the desperation out of her voice. Robert looked at this young woman who had walked away from millions of dollars, was now asking to risk everything on a rundown building in Brooklyn. He saw something in her eyes that reminded him of himself 30 years ago. Hunger, determination, pride. "I'll partner with you," he said, "but I'm not doing you any favors. You'll work harder than you've ever worked in your life. You'll get your hands dirty. You'll learn every aspect of this business from the ground up." Rebecca extended her hand. "That's exactly what I want." Building from nothing, the next 18 months became a blur of hard work and learning. Rebecca was on the construction site every day, wearing work boots and a hard hat, learning from the contractors. Understanding every detail of how buildings actually came together, she learned how to read inspection reports, how to negotiate with suppliers, how to manage contractors who tried to take advantage of her youth and gender. She learned which corners could be cut safely and which ones couldn't. She learned the language of permits and zoning laws and building codes. Her hands, once soft and manicured for society parties, became calloused and strong. Her designer clothes stayed in storage while she lived in jeans and work shirts. Her day started at 6 in the morning and often didn't end until midnight. Diana helped with the business side, teaching Rebecca about financing, investor relations, and financial planning. "You have good instincts," Diana told her one evening as they reviewed cash flow projections. "But instincts aren't enough. You need to understand the numbers inside and out." Rebecca soaked up every lesson like a sponge. At night, after long days on the construction site, she took online courses in property management, real estate finance, and commercial development. She attended networking events, building relationships with other small developers, contractors, and property managers. She also continued her Spanish lessons. Now focusing on business terminology and legal language, she read Spanish real estate journals and followed Latin American property markets. Knowledge was power. Rebecca was building an arsenal. The first success when the Brooklyn building was finally finished. Rebecca stood on the sidewalk and felt tears prickling her eyes. It was beautiful. The brick facade had been carefully restored. The windows gleamed. The ground floor housed a small bakery owned by a local family. The 6 apartments above were already rented to working families at rates they could actually afford. "You did it," Robert said, standing beside her. "Your first project. How does it feel?" "Like I can finally breathe," Rebecca said. The building wasn't going to make her rich. After all the expenses, her profit was modest. but it was hers. She had built it with her own vision, her own hands, her own determination. More importantly, it was proof. Proof that she could succeed. Proof that Jonathan Pierce had been wrong about her. Diana organized a small celebration at a local restaurant. As Rebecca sat with her small team, Robert, Diana, and a few contractors who had become friends, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Joy, pride, belonging. "So what's next?" Robert asked, raising his glass. Rebecca smiled. "There's a property in Queens I've been watching. A small apartment building. The owner is retiring and wants to sell quickly. I think we could create something special there, Robert raised an eyebrow. "If you're willing to partner again, I learned a lot from this project. The next one will be even better." Over the next 2 years, Rebecca and Robert completed 4 more projects together. Each one was carefully chosen, thoughtfully designed, and executed with precision. Rebecca's reputation began to grow in the Brooklyn and Queens development community. She was known for her ethical practices, her beautiful designs, and her commitment to creating affordable housing. She lived frugally, reinvesting almost every penny of profit back into new projects. While she could have afforded a nicer apartment, she stayed in Diana's guest room, saving her money for properties and education. "You know you can afford your own place now," Diana said one evening. "I know," Rebecca replied, "but I'm saving for something specific, the secret weapon." What nobody knew, not even Diana or Robert, was that Rebecca had been using her knowledge of Spanish and her insider information about Jonathan Pierce's business strategies to her advantage. She subscribed to the same Spanish-language real estate publications that Jonathan read. She followed the same Latin American investors that he courted. And because she understood Spanish perfectly, she could attend industry events and listen to conversations that people assumed she couldn't understand. She learned which neighborhoods Jonathan was eyeing for his next luxury developments, and she made sure to buy strategic properties in those areas first, properties that he would eventually need. She learned which investors were growing tired of Jonathan's arrogant attitude, and she quietly built relationships with them, showing them her projects, her ethics, her vision. She was patient, methodical, strategic. She was building not just properties, but a network, a reputation, and a position of power. 3 years after the divorce, Rebecca sat in her small office, now slightly bigger and in a better location, looking at a map of New York City. She had red pins marking properties she owned or had partnered on, blue pins marking properties she was watching, green pins marking Jonathan's holdings and interests. The map told a story of a woman who had started with nothing and was building something significant. A story that was about to intersect with Jonathan Pierce's story in a way he would never expect. Diana walked in with coffee and stopped to look at the map. "You've been busy." "I'm just getting started," Rebecca said. "Rebecca, I have to ask, is this about building a real estate business, or is this about Jonathan?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment. It started being about proving him wrong, about showing him that the girl from Brooklyn he thought was nothing could become something. But somewhere along the way, it became about more than that. It became about creating housing that people can actually afford, about changing neighborhoods without destroying them, about building something that matters. "But," Diana pressed, "but I won't lie. Part of me is looking forward to the day when Jonathan Pierce realizes that I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. And that realization is coming soon." The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning. Heavy cardstock, elegant lettering, the kind of invitation that Jonathan's world produced. For its important events: Manhattan Real Estate Development Association, annual charity auction and gala, benefiting affordable housing, initiatives. Rebecca smiled at the irony. Jonathan Pierce was on the board of this organization, which claimed to support affordable housing while its members built luxury developments that pushed working families out of their neighborhoods. "Are you going to go?" Diana asked, looking at the invitation. Rebecca had received it because her work in Brooklyn and Queens had gained enough recognition that she was now on the association's radar. She was small compared to the major players, but she was notable. "Yes," Rebecca said. "I'm going to go. You'll see him there. You know that." I'm counting on it. Diana looked at her friend carefully. What are you planning? Rebecca's smile was mysterious. Just going to a charity event. Supporting affordable housing. Networking with other developers? Rebecca Torres, you're up to something.
Maybe, Rebecca said.
Or maybe I'm just ready to show the world that the woman Jonathan Pierce thought would disappear has done the opposite. As she set the invitation on her desk, Rebecca felt a familiar flutter of nerves, mixed with excitement. 3 years of hard work? 3 years of building, learning, growing? 3 years of becoming someone that Jonathan Pierce would never recognize. The gala was in 2 months. That gave her exactly enough time to put her final plans into motion. She pulled out her phone and made a call. Robert, I need to talk to you about a property acquisition. It's important. Very important. As she laid out her plan to her trusted partner, Rebecca allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Jonathan Pierce had taught her many things during their marriage, though none of them were what he intended. He had taught her that the world was ruthless, that power mattered. That perception was everything. But he had also taught her something else. He had taught her that underestimating someone based on their background was a critical mistake, and it was a mistake he was about to pay for. The night of truth. Ballroom of the Manhattan Grand Hotel glittered like something from a dream. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over women in designer gowns and men in expensive tuxedos. This was Jonathan Pierce's world. The world he had once told Rebecca she would never truly belong to. Rebecca stood at the entrance, taking a deep breath. She wore a simple but elegant navy blue dress that she had purchased herself. Not designer, but beautifully tailored. Her jewelry was minimal. Pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother, a delicate gold bracelet that Diana had given her for her. Last birthday, she looked nothing like the woman who had tried so hard to fit into Jonathan's world 5 years ago. That woman had worn whatever Jonathan told her to wear, had styled her hair the way he preferred, had made herself small to fit his vision. This Rebecca, tall, confident. She belonged here, not because someone brought her, but because she had earned her place. You look amazing, Diana said, appearing at her side. Diana had come as Rebecca's guest, both for moral support and because she wanted to see what happened next. Thank you for being here, Rebecca said. I wouldn't miss this for anything, Diana grinned. Besides, someone needs to watch you make real estate history. As they entered the ballroom, Rebecca scanned the crowd. She spotted Robert Chen near the bar, talking with some other developers. He caught her eye and gave her an encouraging nod. She saw board members of the Real Estate Development Association, people whose names she had learned, whose projects she had studied, whose respect she had quietly earned through her work. And then she saw him. Jonathan Pierce, looking exactly as he always had. Perfectly groomed, perfectly dressed, perfectly arrogant. On his arm was a young woman, probably 25, with long blonde hair and a nervous smile. His latest acquisition, Rebecca thought. Another young woman he would make feel small until he grew bored. There he is, Diana murmured. Are you ready? More than ready, Rebecca said. The first encounter, Rebecca deliberately positioned herself near the auction display tables, examining the items up for bid. There was artwork, vacation packages, various experiences designed to extract money from wealthy attendees for charity, but the item that interested Rebecca was different. Lot number 17. A property development opportunity. A building in Lower Manhattan that the association had acquired for redevelopment. The winning bidder would partner with the association on creating affordable housing units. Rebecca was studying the property details when she heard a familiar voice behind her. Rebecca. Rebecca Torres. She turned slowly, her face calm and composed. Hello, Jonathan. Jonathan Pierce stared at her as if seeing a ghost. What are you doing here? The same thing as you, I imagine. Attending a charity gala. Supporting affordable housing development. She smiled pleasantly. You remember what that is, don't you? Housing that ordinary people can actually afford? Jonathan's companion looked between them in confusion. Jonathan. Who is this? Nobody important, Jonathan said automatically, then seemed to realize how rude that sounded. An old acquaintance. Actually, I'm his ex-wife, Rebecca said cheerfully to the young woman. I'm Rebecca Torres. I run a property development company focusing on affordable housing in Brooklyn and Queens. The young woman's eyes widened. You're Rebecca Torres? From Torres Development? I read about your Queens project in the Times last month. The article said you were revolutionizing how developers think about affordable housing. Rebecca felt a warm glow of pride. That's very kind. We're just trying to do the right thing. Jonathan's face had gone pale. You have a development company? Did you think I disappeared after the divorce? Rebecca asked, her tone light, but her eyes sharp. Did you think I went back to Brooklyn and gave up? That I accepted that I was nothing like you told me? Rebecca, I never said, oh, but you did, Jonathan. Many times. In English and in Spanish. You thought I couldn't understand when you spoke Spanish with your friends, but I understood every word. Jonathan's face went from pale to red. You understood Spanish? Perfectly. Every word you said about me. Every joke at my expense. Every cruel comment you thought I was too ignorant to comprehend. Rebecca's voice remained calm, almost conversational. I have to thank you, actually. Those conversations motivated me to prove you wrong. The young woman on Jonathan's arm looked at him with new eyes, uncertainty creeping into her expression. The gala proceeded with dinner and speeches. Rebecca sat at a table with Robert, Diana, and several other small-scale developers she had befriended over the years. Across the room, she could feel Jonathan watching her, his expression confused and calculating. When the auction began, Rebecca waited patiently through the early lots. Artwork sold for impressive sums. Vacation packages went to the highest bidders. And then Lot 17 was announced. The next item is a unique opportunity, the auctioneer announced. A partnership with our association to develop the historic Brennan Building in Lower Manhattan. The winning bidder will work with our committee to create a mixed-use development with a requirement that 40% of residential units be affordable housing. This is a chance to make a real difference in our city while also generating significant returns. We'll start the bidding at $500,000. Several hands went up immediately. Rebecca waited, watching the numbers climb. 600,000, 700,000, 800,000. At 900,000, only 3 bidders remained. Jonathan Pierce was one of them. Rebecca recognized the other as a major developer known for luxury properties at $1 million. The major developer dropped out. It was down to Jonathan and one other bidder. 1,100,000, Jonathan called out, his voice confident. He wanted this property. She could see it in his posture, his expression. 1,200,000, the other bidder countered. 1,500,000, Jonathan said firmly, jumping the bid significantly to discourage competition. The other bidder hesitated, then shook his head and sat down. We have 1,500,000, the auctioneer said. Going once, going twice, $2 million, Rebecca said clearly, raising her paddle. The ballroom fell silent. Heads turned toward her table. Jonathan's face registered shock, then anger. $2 million to paddle number 73, the auctioneer said, excitement creeping into his voice. Mr. Pierce, do we have a counterbid? Jonathan stood up, his face flushed. 2,500,000. 3 million, Rebecca countered immediately, not even standing, just raising her paddle calmly. Whispers rippled through the ballroom. This was far beyond what anyone had expected for this lot. Who is she? Someone whispered nearby. A Torres development. She's been doing amazing work in Brooklyn. Can she afford that bid? $3 million, the auctioneer repeated. Do we have a counterbid? Jonathan looked at Rebecca across the ballroom. She looked back, her expression calm and unwavering. He could see it in her eyes. She would keep bidding. She wanted this property, but more than that, she wanted to beat him. His companion tugged at his arm. Jonathan, that's too much. Your financial advisor said to stay under $2 million for this property. 3,200,000, Jonathan called out, pulling his arm free. $4 million, Rebecca said. The ballroom erupted in excited chatter. Robert leaned over to Rebecca. Rebecca, that's too much. We talked about a ceiling of $3 million. Trust me, Rebecca whispered. Jonathan stood frozen. $4 million was significantly more than the property was worth, even with the development potential. His board would question such an expenditure. His investors would demand explanations. But backing down now, losing to his ex-wife in front of everyone, would be humiliating. $4 million, the auctioneer repeated. Going once. Jonathan opened his mouth, then closed it. Going twice. Jonathan sat down slowly, his face a mask of suppressed rage. Sold. To paddle number 73 for $4 million? The ballroom burst into applause. Rebecca stood and nodded graciously, accepting congratulations from people at nearby tables. The confrontation after the auction, Rebecca stepped onto the terrace for some air. The Manhattan skyline sparkled around her, beautiful and indifferent. She wasn't alone for long. Jonathan appeared in the doorway, his face tight with anger. For $1 million, he said without preamble. You don't have $4 million. You're bluffing. You'll embarrass yourself when you can't pay. Rebecca turned to face him calmly. I have it, Jonathan. Torres Development is not a one-woman operation anymore. We have investors, partners, and a line of credit. We've completed 12 projects in 3 years, all profitable, all making a difference in our communities. 12 projects, Jonathan repeated, as if the number was impossible. 12 projects. While you were building luxury condos that sit half empty because nobody can afford them. I was creating housing for families who actually need it, and making money doing it. You did all this out of spite, Jonathan accused. To prove something to me. No, Jonathan. I did this for me. You were just the catalyst. Rebecca stepped closer. Do you know what I learned from you? I learned that the world doesn't care about your intentions. It cares about results. You intended to make me feel worthless. Instead, you gave me a reason to prove my worth. You're making a mistake with that property, Jonathan said. $4 million is too much. Is it? Rebecca smiled. The Brennan Building is structurally sound with historic designation protections that make it eligible for significant tax credits. It's in a neighborhood on the verge of major development, with a new subway extension approved for completion in 2 years. The property isn't worth $4 million today. It will be worth $8 million in 3 years. Jonathan's expression shifted as he realized she had done her homework. Thorough, detailed homework. But more importantly, Rebecca continued, by partnering with the Real Estate Development Association on this project, Torres Development gains credibility and connections with major players in Manhattan real estate. That's worth more than money. You've changed, Jonathan said quietly. No, I was always this person. You just never bothered to see it. You looked at me and saw a girl from Brooklyn who didn't belong in your world. You never saw my degree in architecture. You never saw my ambition or my intelligence. You saw only what you wanted to see. Rebecca, Jonathan paused, something unfamiliar crossing his face. Regret? I was wrong about you. Yes, you were. But your mistake was my opportunity. So thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for underestimating me. Thank you for making me angry enough to prove you wrong. Thank you for being exactly arrogant enough that I could use your own playbook against you. What do you mean? Rebecca smiled. I mean that I've been watching your moves, listening to your plans, following your strategies. That property you were so desperate to buy tonight, you wanted it because it's next to the Brennan Building. You were planning to buy both, weren't you? Create one large development that would maximize profits. Jonathan's silence confirmed her guess. Well, now you can't. Oh. Because I own the Brennan Building. And Torres Development doesn't build luxury condos that push families out of neighborhoods. We build communities where people can actually afford to live. She walked toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Jonathan. That woman on your arm tonight? She looks at you the way I used to. Like you're something special. Do her a favor. Tell her the truth. Tell her that in 5 years, you'll discard her the way you discarded me. Give her the chance to leave with her dignity intact. The future belongs to Rebecca 3 months later. Rebecca stood in front of the Brennan Building, watching crews begin the renovation work. The project was ambitious. Mixed-use development with ground-floor retail, market-trade apartments on floors 2 through 4, and affordable housing units on floors 5 through 7. Her design preserved the building's historic character while modernizing its systems and layout. It was exactly the kind of project she had dreamed of doing when she was a young architecture. Student Diana appeared beside her, holding 2 cups of coffee. The Times wants to do a feature story on you. From society wife to development pioneer, or something like that. Tell them I'll do the interview. But only if they focus on the work, not my personal history with Jonathan Pierce. Fair enough. Diana smiled. Speaking of Jonathan, did you hear? Hear what? He and that young woman broke up. Apparently she asked him about his ex-wife, about how the marriage ended. When he tried to give his usual story about you being inadequate for his world, she'd already researched you online. She saw your projects, read articles about your work, and realized he was lying. She walked out on him at a restaurant in front of his business partners. Rebecca felt a small surge of satisfaction. Good for her. You know what the best part is? Diana continued. The real estate community is buzzing about you. Young developers, especially women, are calling you an inspiration. You're changing how people think about affordable housing development. Rebecca looked up at the building before her. It was old, a little worn, but full of potential, like she had been 3 years ago. I'm just getting started, she said. This building is one project. But I want to create a model that other developers can follow. I want to prove that you can make money and make a difference. Robert Chen joined them, carrying blueprints for another potential property. Rebecca, I have something to show you. There's a building complex in the Bronx. 6 buildings, all needing renovation. The owner is retiring and willing to sell below market value to a developer committed to maintaining affordable housing. Rebecca's eyes lit up. Show me. As the 3 of them spread blueprints across the hood of Robert's car. Planning and dreaming and calculating, Rebecca felt complete contentment. This was who she was meant to be. Not Jonathan Pierce's wife, trying to fit into a world that didn't want her. But Rebecca Torres, architect, developer, visionary. She had started with nothing but determination and $75,000 in savings. 3 years later, Torres Development was a respected name in affordable housing. Her projects had provided homes for over 200 families. Her work had been featured in architecture and real estate publications. Her success had inspired other developers to reconsider how they thought about affordable housing, and Jonathan Pierce. He was just a man she used to know. A man who had tried to make her feel worthless, and instead had given her the fire to prove her worth. Rebecca pulled out her phone and took a photo of the Brennan building. She posted it to Torres's Development's social media with a simple caption. Every building tells a story. This one tells the story of transformation, resilience, and hope. Construction begins today on a project that will provide homes for 50 families. This is just the beginning. Within minutes, comments and likes started pouring in. Support from community members. Congratulations from other developers. Inquiries from people wanting to learn more about her work. Diana looked over her shoulder at the phone. You know, when you walked out of that penthouse 3 years ago, I wasn't sure what would happen to you. What did you think would happen? Rebecca asked. Honestly, I thought you might struggle for a while. Maybe eventually take that settlement money Jonathan offered. Start something small. But this. Diana gestured at the building, at the blueprints, at everything Rebecca had built. This exceeded every expectation. You didn't just survive leaving him. You flourished. Rebecca smiled, remembering the woman she had been. Scared, hurt, uncertain. And then she looked at the woman she had become. Strong, confident, purposeful. I thought he was putting me in my place, Rebecca said softly. He had no idea that my place was somewhere he could never imagine. Somewhere earned, not given. Somewhere real. As the sun set over Manhattan, casting golden light across the city, Rebecca Torres stood tall. The girl from Brooklyn had become exactly what she was meant to be. Not despite Jonathan Pierce's cruelty, but in defiant response to it. And that was the sweetest victory of all.